Hi, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and on this podcast, we're going to talk about some deep stuff. I'm here to tell you that you're amazing, and often, the only person who can't see that is you. No matter who you are, what you do, or where you're from, there's greatness in you. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and welcome to the Transformation Starts Today podcast, where I interview leaders, champions, and high performers from all walks of life as they share their story, the lessons they've learned along the way, and empowering perspectives to help you create an extraordinary life without regret, starting today. Today we have with us Dr. Karthik Ramanan. Dr. K's journey led him to leave his career on Wall Street, go back to medical school, and become a certified naturopathic physician. He has reinvented himself through the power of emotional well-being by finding the wonder within himself. Now he guides high achievers on their pathway out of the depths of negative thinking and toward new peaks of achievable change. Dr. K, it's an honor to have you with us. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, my friend. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, man. And so for our audience, to give them a little background, Dr. K and I are good friends. We met each other in medical school. He was a year ahead of me in the program. And just to give you the acknowledgement, I remember just getting to know you, getting to see you, and you were the student body president of the medical school. And just getting to see the level of care that you had, not only for your fellow students and the school, the community, but your heart was just fully in everything that you did. And it was so inspiring to me. And then ultimately, you ended up passing the torch on to me to be to be the student body president, and just that relationship, getting to see you thrive in school. I just was very inspired by you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Jamil. One of the things that stood out to me about you back when we met, like you said, I was a year ahead in the program. Um, Medical school is stressful, right? There was a lot. It was not the easiest task, and then of course, people like you and I, we took on more responsibility because, hey, we have a full-time job plus being a student. Now let's take on another full-time job being student government president. But I think it's just who we were. But one thing that stood out to me about you, because all of us going through so much stress, there's so many people that unfortunately end up in the realm of complaining and those type of things rather than figuring out how can we solve all of this, right? How can we have it all, so to speak, right? In terms of performing in school, setting up for a good career, but also enjoying our life along the way. And then there was you, that I don't think I have ever seen you not smile. And so, like, despite all the difficult circumstances that we all went through, I'd say among the hundreds, probably over 1,000 students that I've seen go through that program since, I can safely say that nobody brought more of that positive, empowering spirit than you. So it's awesome getting to reconnect with you and just being on your show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I received that fully, and I want to share something because about that. I think in life, every one of us, we go through things, and I had my moments in medical school. I had my challenging times. And at the same time, I do come from a space that every one of us can empower ourselves moment to moment to say, regardless of what is going on, who do I choose to be in this moment? How do I choose to meet it? And what version of me is best capable or equipped to handle this situation and create the outcome that I want? And I think there's a level of intentionality and deliberateness that most of us don't bring to the moment, not because we can't, but because we just don't think to. And if you
Right.
bring that level of intentionality and deliberateness, you can show up in such a way that you're proud of how you showed up, in hindsight. And I think I had so many things happen to me in my life prior to going to medical school that was traumatic, that once I was in school, I had this perspective on life of I'm going to make the most out of today. And yeah, I might have some exam later on that internally there might be some freak out around, or there
Yeah.
might be some situation that's on the horizon, but I'm with Karthik right now, or I'm with the
Mhm.
person at the cafe right now, and I'm going to make this a beautiful moment.
Yeah,
And so there was a lot of reason to smile. It's like I remember hearing
absolutely.
Tony Robbins say at some point, if you look for what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. And so in that same way, I could look for a million reasons while I was a student to not smile and to have all this, but I
Hmm.
could also find a million reasons too. And then I get to
Exactly.
choose how I want to, choose my own adventure kind of thing.
Well, and what I love about that too is you're not dismissing the pain of what exists, right? And I think that's one of the challenges with that I have with, say, toxic positivity, just ignoring what is difficult, ignoring what is problematic, and just obsessively looking for the silver lining no matter what. I think when we can honor, like, hey, you know what? Sometimes life sucks right now, and it's okay to feel that and go through that. Let's also not forget that there's all these other things that are possible, sometimes as a direct result of what might have gone wrong. Again, wrong, right is all subjective, right? And so when we can then process what happened, just come to acceptance with it, not condoning it, just saying this happened. What lesson do I want to learn? And then you can even reverse engineer that, like you mentioned, to the moment and say, well, how can I show up in this moment that my future self would be proud of?
Yeah,
Right? What is this situation allowing me to do that I would not be able to do otherwise?
yeah,
And I think in that way we can honor, what might be a struggle in the moment, but also recognize that pain is our greatest teacher. And so if we're being presented with this situation right now, there's something we can learn that we can then take forward. Like you said, how we meet this moment, I think, is what defines us.
yeah. And just to build on that before we dive in to your story. So for our listeners, I want you to just play with this as a possibility. There's you, and then there's your experiences, or there's you, and then there's what happens. That is not the same thing. And so if we come from the space of I've got all this stuff going on outside of, this moment that's kind of playing out in my head, worries, fears, anxieties, whatever that might be. But here I am with a person right in front of me. What do they have to do with any of that?
Hmm.
Zero. So why
Yeah.
bring that into the moment? Like I don't have to. I
Yeah.
could, and it could bleed through if we're not intentional about it. But like you said, it's not about faking it. It's not a toxic positivity thing. I think I heard Tim Ferriss say it. It's like a practical optimism or something like that, where it's coming
Hmm.
from the space of I'm going to ground myself in what's real and I'm going to deal with it as effectively as I know how to. But at least in my paradigm, showing up with a level of energy and enthusiasm and a perspective that's aligned as close as I can get it to what I believe is real, then coming from that space, I'm going to deal with it as effectively as possible. I'm going to be more creative, more resourceful. I'm going to find the solution way faster than if I was
Yes.
spiraling in my mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then and it's a great point you bring up about the person sitting across from you is has nothing to do with whatever may have happened that morning. Maybe something like disrupts your day, but say you have a water leak at home right before you're about to leave and there's flooding, and okay, you call the plumber, you get all that handled, and then you run into a meeting. Later on in the day, I work with executives as well, and one of the challenges that they have to face is the person that is coming into your office, whatever they are coming in with, whether it's a professional thing at work, maybe it's a personal concern, something about their career, whatever they're bringing to your attention is one of, if not the most important thing in their day, maybe their life, right? They're bringing that to you. And so if you have something else that's clouding your present moment that has nothing to do with this person, now you're letting that influence what otherwise is a really meaningful and important moment for that person. Now you might go and have the same conversation with the next five people, right? But that's the nature of being a leader. It's what we sign up for. If we let those other factors cloud the situation in front of us, we're giving the person in front of us uh, certainly at best a lesser experience, but at worst that feeling of being dismissed or I'm not important when really it had nothing to do with them. And that's how we can lose trust, we can lose faith, we can lose culture in an organization. All of these things are it's vital. So to being able to not completely dismiss again, but just say, okay, presence, right? That problem is still there, and I'll deal with it I've dealt with it the best I know how to this moment, but now it's 10 o'clock. It's ready to meet. I'm ready to meet this person. And that's all that matters right now. And then I can go back to worrying about that other problem that later, you know?
You just inspired something that I think is going to be a great segue to the next question I want to ask you. And it goes to what you just said, how that person is speaking to you, and you might have 10 other, similar conversations lined up right after, but for them, this is like the conversation. In a similar way, when we share our story, we might have shared that story a million times, but there are people that are hearing it for the first time.
Yes,
And if we deliver that story in such a way that our heart is in it, our presence is in it, they feel us. And so, with that in mind, for our listeners who don't know you yet, Karthik, they haven't heard your story, can you please share with us who you are, what led you to where you are today, and what inspired you to do what you do?
absolutely. I love it. So I want you to picture this for a moment. You're standing 30th floor, skyrise, brand new apartment building, your first apartment that you've ever had to yourself, no roommates, your entire life, right? This is a moment that is the culmination of so much professional sacrifice to get here. You're reflecting as you're looking across the thousands of dots across the New Jersey horizon. There's not a single building of that height around you, and you're able to see the sunsets, the weather patterns. It's just the feeling of being on top of the world. The 60, 80, 100-hour work weeks that it took to get there, the losing so many friends during the Great Recession. So you're working at, that's where I was. I was working at one of the Wall Street investment banks, and starting in 2005, had no idea what was coming. I still remember the day Lehman Brothers went under.
Yeah.
You're coming into the office like it's a regular day at work, and all of a sudden you look up at the TVs, you see CNBC, Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt. Everybody realizes, hey, they're our next door neighbor. We go running over to that side of the tower, and we look down, and we just see thousands of people walking out with filing boxes. Just 165-year-old bank vanishes over the weekend. And I was just thinking, as a young 20-something-year-old professional, these people came to work just like a normal day, like I did, and now they've got to go back and explain to their spouses, their kids, their whole financial structure is in question. Like everything just got uprooted. And I responded the only way I knew how. Just work harder, make yourself as indispensable as possible, and just be a perfectionist, people pleaser, say yes to everything. And that, so, but I got rewarded for it. I got opportunities to do some really great innovative work, and we were able to as a team. And I got rewarded with the promotions, the raises, the bonuses, all of those things. And so that culmination was getting to this apartment, being able to look at that view and just reflect on everything that it took to get there. The missed family events, the, waking up at 1 a.m. to answer the BlackBerry just to get up again at 4:30. All of those things. And here I was making more money than I thought I could in my late 20s. I was blessed to be able to pay off my undergraduate student loans. I was able to pay off my parents' credit card debt. I was giving more to charity than I ever thought I could in my late 20s. I was a single guy in New York. I mean, world was my oyster. And I hated the man in the mirror.
Mm.
I couldn't understand how is it that you can have supposedly everything you're supposed to have to be happy, and the career trajectory and everything else, and be absolutely miserable inside. I was missing the two things that I wanted more than anything else. I wanted a great relationship and marriage, and I wanted meaningful work that left an impact. And I didn't know how to find either of those two things. So I hit rock bottom, but nobody knew. I kept that all to myself. I've had the honor of I was a keynote speaker at the Arizona Society of Human Resource Management, the state conference. Had a chance to talk to 800 plus HR professionals, kind of telling this story that, I was the guy, think about your best employee, if you want something done right, done fast, sensitive client issue, the person that'll say yes to everything and do it right, do it well, that was me, right? And nobody knew how much I was struggling inside. Like, you never know what somebody's going through. And you just can't assume, because I knew that I was going to work, putting on my smile, going, getting everything done. And I was having questions as I was coming home of like, would anyone miss me if I was gone?
Hmm.
That was when I knew, okay, I can't go back down this road again. I need to figure out something. I just didn't know what it was. Well, as usually, life presents you with beautiful opportunities, and so my sister was doing her master's at MIT at the time, and so she went upstate to visit my parents for her spring break, and I had seen her at Christmas like 3 months prior. Anyway, so I went upstate to see my family, and in that 3 months, my sister had lost 30 pounds. Her cystic acne was gone. She was vibrant, radiant, happy, and I was like, oh my God, whatever you did, I'm gonna do. So, what did you do? And she goes, I've just been eating this whole food plant-based diet. I said, okay, what? Fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, mostly uncooked, like they're found from the earth. I'm like, God, oh my God, that sounds horrible. All right, show me how to do this. Um, because when you're at rock bottom, you're willing to do anything. You're willing to say yes to the things that you otherwise would say, I don't think so. You have nothing to lose. And that's where I was. So I said, okay, sure, let's do this. Now, at the beginning of April of 2011, I decided that my best ideas in life had gotten me to that moment. So the perfectionism, the people pleasing, if I can't do it perfectly, it's not worth doing it at all.
Hmm.
If I'm going to do something, I'm going to go all in. This all or nothing mentality, no gradual anything. And I realized that mentality had led to all this career success and all this personal misery. So what if I take an opposite approach? Because you can't just keep doing the same thing, right? And so I said, okay, well, I'm just going to gradually change the way I eat. I'm just going to stop stepping on the scale every day for accountability, really just a reason to make myself feel bad. Self-sabotage, right? Didn't realize that at the time. And I said, okay, let's just see what happens. 3 weeks in, I'm just starting to feel a little better and better and better. And I just say, okay, I got to step on the scale today, see what's going on. And I look down and I see the lowest weight that I'd ever seen as an adult. And that was the moment my mind blew open, Jamil. And I said, okay, hold on. What if the body and the confidence and the life, the relationship, all the stuff that I wanted, what if it's all possible and the only thing holding me back was me? And that was the first realization that I had, that we have more authorship over our outcomes than we ever give ourselves credit for. And sure enough, I didn't tell anybody at the office what I was doing. I kept all to myself. But soon enough, people started noticing, the weight loss and whatever else. But I'd have the questions of, I'd bring my jars of green juice to the office. I'm like, so what's in your pond scum this morning? Those kind of questions. But people started asking me for advice. And so I just bring in, some things that they could try, some recipes they can make at home, things like that. And I saw hypertension, chronic migraines, chronic joint pain, type 2 diabetes, all this stuff start to disappear. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But the look on their faces, Karthik, thank you. I've never felt this good in years. I didn't think, my doctor had me on statins for a year and a half and nothing changed. And the 6 weeks of changing my breakfast, like I felt something that I'd never felt before. Fulfillment in what I was able to offer a fellow human being, right? And I said, I got to figure out how to make this my career. Well, anyway, down the line, some more exploration. I found out about naturopathic medicine. And by that time, my sister had actually moved here to Arizona. And I called her up and I said, okay, after my time at Cornell, I never wanted to go back to school after that. And this is the worst financial decision I would ever make in my life, bar none, not even close. But what do you think about if I quit my career here on Wall Street, pretty much spend off my life savings, go into a ton of debt, and then nothing's guaranteed on the other side? Feel like I have to do it though. She's like, one of the best naturopathic schools in the country is right up the road from where I live in Arizona, right? I said, you've got to be kidding me, really? So, and that was pretty much it. I found out about our school, which is now Sonoran University of Health Sciences, and I applied there, nowhere else. But you know what? The beautiful thing was, so I'm flying out of Newark Airport. The movers had taken my stuff. This is April of 2013 now. Movers had taken my stuff. I'm sitting in the window seat. and we're flying out of Newark Airport, and I'm looking out of the window and literally watching my old life fly away from me, right? And it was one of those amazing moments where you realize you're turning the chapter in the page of your own life. And I look out and I realize nobody in Arizona knows me. Like if there was ever a chance to reinvent who I was, this is it. So I took out a sheet of paper and a pen and I started writing down this vision of this ideal version of myself, this Dr. K that I'm building in the future. What are his habits, routines? Who does he spend time with? What does he eat? What does he not eat? How does he move his body? What's his sleep patterns? What does he read? Oh, I never used to read. Okay, well, let's get an Audible account. Let's go. Like all that stuff. And so that allowed me to then, that was the blueprint of who I had to be. So you talked about, student government president. I had never taken on a leadership position in my life ever. Certainly, work positions that I just got promoted into, but never ran for anything, never in high school, never in college. Okay, well, I was president of chess club in high school one year because nobody else was in chess club, but I had to rebuild the club anyway. But outside of that, no leadership roles. And so I was like, well, if I looked at the resume of this Dr. K, this ideal version of my future self, what would be on his resume? Well, clearly he would have been student government president. Scared the crap out of me to run. But I said, all right, I got to do it. And as you know, I won. And then it became even scarier, right? You've done the job. Not easy, right? Managing a ton of personalities while you're like, I'm also trying to just go to school and like pass, It's not the easiest thing to do. You got dealing with everybody else's challenges. But I knew it was what I had to do. And so I lived not in comfort, not even in, does this make sense now? Does this make sense for who I want to become? And so I imagine you were probably similar, for the ungodly number of hours that we spent studying medicine and certainly treating patients, right? I spent an equal amount of time on my professional development, learning public speaking, learning business, reading as many books as I could, all of that, because I knew that my success after graduation would have as much to do with all of that stuff, if not more, than the actual medicine itself. And so that was the avenue that I took. Anyway, fast forward to, by the way, the other aspect, the other part I wanted was not just meaningful work, but a meaningful relationship. And I did meet Samantha in my class first year of medical school. We were in the same class. It took us a year to start dating, but we got married a year and a half after medical school. So around that time, 2018, 19, I'm starting to think about, people are talking about burnout so much more now than before. It's like, oh, we have a word for what we all experienced back in the, like, that makes sense. And I said, and not just leaders, employees as well, right? It's everybody. And I said, I got to be able to bring something different to the table here, especially with our system of medicine. One of the tenets is aiding the body to heal itself. First, remove the obstacles to cure, and then aid the body to heal itself. What if we brought a similar approach to emotional health? And so here's to kind of lead into, how that informs what I do today. We generally have two solutions for, like, how do you solve a mental health challenge for an individual or group of people? Well, you've got the counseling and psychotherapy route, which I'm a huge proponent of, especially trauma counseling, EMDR, incredibly powerful. I recommend EMDR for pretty much everybody, but especially if they've gone through something that needs some internal rewiring. And then there's the psychiatry approach, and medications, especially acutely for certain people, certain situations, can be very powerful. Long term, depends on the situation, but my philosophy is still like, can we get to the root cause? Because my journey to emotional health came through food, right? It wasn't either of those things. It came through food. So what gives? And that was what informed, the core lesson of what I teach today, which is the 5 pillars of emotional health. So this is something I cover in my keynotes and obviously in my book. But it's fundamentally this. So Jamil, if I were to ask you, this plant over here is dying and I need your help to revive it, what would you suggest I do to help it thrive again?
But we got to just pour that Coca-Cola all over them.
Right? There you go.
Well, we need the sunlight. We need the healthy soil. We need the healthy environment. We got to remove whatever toxins it's being exposed to. We got to speak life into it. We got to do all these.
Speak life into it. The water, right? All of those things. The water, the sun, the soil. I have asked this question to thousands of people to this point. Not a single person has ever said, let's find it the right medication as their first response,
Yeah.
right? Even the people that fight me and say, Dr. K, I kill every plant that I ever touch. Please don't make me answer that question. And I says, please just indulge me. Just say something. And they're like, you pull it out of them. You get water, soil, whatever, sunlight. Everybody knows what that plant needs to thrive. Why? Because it is an organism made for nature, and we intuitively know what it needs to thrive. And we assume that when it is not doing well, it is simply not receiving what it needs to in order to thrive. What if we applied that same philosophy to our own emotional well being? And so, the 5 pillars of emotional health: your psychology, relationships, nutrition, sleep, and body movement. When we optimize those 5 areas, we set the stage to be emotionally healthy. Now, does that solve everything for everybody all the time? No. But can it get us 80, 90% of the way there? Oftentimes 100% of the way there, yes. And so when you address the root cause and recognize we too are an organism made for nature, not this crazy modern world that we live in, the machinery and the operating system is literally not equipped for this world that we live in. I'm not saying go live in the forest. I'd be the first one to leave. I can't deal with it. But how can we bring some elements of nature back into our modern life to give us a fighting chance to be emotionally healthy? And that's what it's all about.
Love that. And I got a bunch of follow-ups. Thank you so much for sharing everything. And a couple things that came to mind. Excuse me, I was taking some notes while you were sharing of what came up for me that you inspired. First thing, the idea that there you were on Wall Street, putting on the smile, but then you'd be driving back home, or you'd be on your way back home, however you were getting there, and the thought, would anyone miss me if I was gone? And the idea that nobody knows. And so
Yeah.
for our listeners, if this is you, if you're in a space of externally everyone thinks things are perfect, but internally I'm in a really bad spot, I strongly encourage you, ask for help. There are people out there. There's Karthik, there's myself, there's anyone who's in your vicinity, there's people that are friends of yours that could point you in the right direction. But ask for help because you're not alone. I think so often when we're struggling with something, there's this thought that we might have that we assume is true, and I can promise you it never is, that nobody else understands, that I'm the only one going through it. Just like, we talked about being in school together. There you are in a classroom, and the teacher says, anyone have a question? And nobody raises their hand, and you're sitting there going, I have a question, but I don't want to appear to not know. So you don't raise your hand. But then let's say you decide I'm going to. So then you raise your hand, and then after you break the ice, 15 people raise their hand, or you raise your hand and then somebody else goes, thank you so much. I really wanted to know that. And in your mind, you're like, well, why didn't you raise your hand? For the same reason that you weren't going to. So if you
Yeah.
play in the world of what if other people around you are going through the same challenge? And what if you being authentic and vulnerable enough to open up and say, someone goes, hey, Bob, how are you doing? And if you were to say, assuming it's like, time appropriate and to a friend of yours or something, you might say, are you just asking or do you really want to know?
Mm.
And then the person might get caught off guard and the person might say, no, I really want to know. Now they might not, but let's say somebody says, yeah, I really want to know. And you might say, I'm actually struggling right now. This is going on at home and this is going on over here, and I'm just barely getting by right now. That conversation first might give Bob permission to open up and go, I thought I was the only one. Like I'm going through that too. And all of a sudden you've got a sense of community, camaraderie, someone understands kind of thing. But Bob might also go, you know what? I know somebody who can help you with that. Or Bob might be able to help you with that. You will having the strength and the courage to open up, it'll likely be so serving. So that's the first thing. Second thing, you said, what if the only thing holding me back was me? And at least in my own life experience, as well as with all the people I've worked with in the last 20 years, that's always the case. And so the idea, that doesn't mean there's not other factors, everything's a co-creation, but ultimately, at the end of the day, You get to decide what you do and don't do, what you say and don't say, what you lean into, what you shy away from. If I often tell people, moment you have an infinite amount of second chances. So you have this moment right now, and then you recognize I'm not fulfilled here, I'm not happy here, I don't like this, whatever it might be. Something needs to change. And then let's say you don't change. At some point, it could be the next moment, it could be a week later, whatever it might be, that same feeling comes back up, potentially more intensely. Something's not right. I'm not really happy here. I'm not fulfilled here. Something needs to change. At some point, you can choose to listen to that. And if you choose to listen to it, you have an infinite number of second chances to make life different. No matter what your life looks like right now, you can begin to shift that. And it starts with the one step at a time. Then you mentioned turn the chapter on the book when you were shifting from New York to Arizona. I turned the chapter or the page on the book of my life. And I just wrote, recreate yourself starting now. Everyone that you meet doesn't know you. They don't know who you used to be. They don't know what stories you have about yourself. You get to choose. And often people think that, I come from a space of thinking people are not nouns, they're verbs. A noun is a static, unchanging thing. A verb is a process. It's ongoing.
Mhm.
You are not a noun, you're a verb. You're a constant unfolding. But we often relate to a story and narrative about who we think we are, who we used to be, and we assume that's just who we are. It's a set in stone thing. So if somebody goes, this is a way of being, and you might say, oh, I really wish I could be that way, but I wasn't born like that. That's not real. That doesn't exist beyond this mental prison that you built for yourself. So what if you could turn the chapter into the next chapter of the book of your life and say, who do I want to be? And then, like you said, what would he do? What would she do? When you're talking about, the future Dr. K that you were stepping into becoming,
Yeah.
how does he eat? How does he read? What does he, who does he talk to? How does he present himself in a room? And you start becoming that version of you now. And so the last thing that came up for me there was that idea of who is the version of me that I'd like to become, asking me to step into right now. So, for our listeners who've seen the Back to the Future movies, I often reference this when I give talks. So, main character's name is Marty. First Back to the Future movie, he goes back in time to around his parents' high school. It's like prom, senior year, that kind of stuff. And he changes some things without meaning to. And what ends up happening is he runs away at one point. He pulls a photo out of his pocket, and it's a photo of his mom, his dad, he, and his sister in his present day. He and his sister disappear from the photo because what he changed made it where his parents weren't going to be together. And he spends the rest of the movie trying to fix that. So here's something to try on. Your present self is the past of future you. What you do right now determines what version of future you will exist or not exist. There's an infinite amount of possibilities in that future you. Which one's going to be the one you end up experiencing? What is that determined by? The present moment is always pregnant with the next moment. If you want a better tomorrow, you need a better now. And so you have to create that moment. How do you do that? Who do I want to be? And then from that space, what would that version of me do? And then you start being it now. How would that version of me dress, eat, etc.? And when you do that, it's not even like minor changes. Those like small things become huge things. And life
Right.
changes so quickly. And so just wanted to share a few of those things that inspired from your story.
I love that. Thank you. One thing uh, I want to go back to the first point about people. Uh, if you're struggling, someone's struggling. I would say this. This is not a stretch. Every client that I've worked with, or every employee at a company that I work with through my emotionally healthy company program, no matter how well put together they look on the outside, or if I may say, the ones that have their shit together, so it looks like, no, nothing's ever perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. I've had people come to me that you would, from the outside, never guess what they struggle with. The thing that they struggle with is the thing that you think they're extraordinary at, but they don't see it. Imposter syndrome,
Great way
right?
of putting it. Yeah.
And I had a great conversation with a gentleman who's an executive coach for. I mean, he worked with C-suite execs in the Fortune 50, very very high level. He said, in my career, there is not a single executive incredibly high performing people, right? There's not a single executive I've ever worked with that didn't have some degree of imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
You'd never see it. They don't behave that way. We don't see it with our eyes. And social media doesn't make anything better. Right? We just see the highlights. It's not reality. It's not reality. What I would just say is this: whatever you're going through, just like other people don't know all the things that you're going through, you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah.
And so don't idealize what they might be going through and compare it to yours. Just focus on, like what you said there. What is your present self doing to write the story of your future self? That's all that matters. That's all that matters. Because you keep living that way day in and day out, you change who you become. And when you change who you become, you start changing the outcomes that happen in your life. And so getting the help that you need is, and I'll also honor this too, because I had this experience as well long ago. Um, Sometimes people do go to therapy, right? And there's so many different varieties and professionals of different calibers, just like in any profession. And then maybe the first person they went to, they didn't have a good experience with. And so they end up writing off working on themselves entirely. And it's understandable. I went through the same thing. I was completely dismissed with, the first therapist that I went to when I was in college. And in her defense, it was something that she sees day in and day out, and it's got to be challenging, right? Um, but that doesn't mean that every experience is going to be the same way. Is going to be somebody you connect with and somebody who can completely transform your life. You're going to do the transformation. They can guide you, right? And I think as long as we go into it with that, say, okay, if we will change, just like every biological being, we all change when it hurts enough. When it hurts enough. So if you say it hurts enough right now, I'm willing to change, then you do what you have to do. Find the people that you need to find, get the help that you need to get. But I'll tell you one thing, Jamil, correct me if I'm wrong. Ourselves and everybody that we've ever worked with, has anyone ever regretted becoming a growth seeker?
No.
Has anyone regretted, like, you know what? I wish I could just go back to being, in my own head about things and complaining about everything. I wish I could just go back to living a lower vibration life, whatever it is. Nobody ever says that.
No.
Nobody ever says that. You cross that threshold, there's no going back. And it doesn't make life perfect by any means. Like, pain is going to happen. Life is just that way. But how we respond to it becomes completely different. And as a result, our experience of life, regardless of the circumstance, our experience of life becomes better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought up, if people have had a negative or at least a not helpful experience, they reached out for help, they tried and just didn't work out the way they wanted it to. That doesn't mean another try or another experience, another person wouldn't be the unlock for them. And so
Right. Multiple second chances, right? So,
exactly. And so just
yeah.
recognizing that, has anybody in the world in history dealt with what I've been dealing with and gotten support? If the answer is yes, which it always is, then that means that there is hope out there. There's something that I can find, whether it's within or without, that will support me on my journey. But I have to keep looking. And like you said, I have to want it enough. And
Well,
so,
one thing that in medical school, you'll relate to this. There's so many of our colleagues, unfortunately, a lot of complaining, right, in terms of career outcomes or whatever else, right? And um, my point was this: like, we can all make blanket statements about whatever it is. All of this group of people are this, or our career prospects in this field or that, or whatever it is. But I looked at it this way, like, yeah, there are a lot of our fellow doctors who maybe didn't learn the business or professional skills in order to really take their practice to the next level. But I looked at it and it was like, well, that person's really successful. That person's really successful. What are they doing that I can learn from?
yeah,
Because to me, it was like, if one person is succeeding, that means it's possible. Doesn't mean that I will reach that level if I want to, or not. I mean, whatever. But the fact that there is a blueprint, let's figure out what that blueprint is and then make our version of it, try what works for us. It's the same thing with our personal growth. If somebody has crossed that threshold from suffering to fulfillment, there's a way.
yeah,
Maybe I can too. What if the only thing holding me back is me?
yeah. Yeah, what if the only thing holding me back is the story I'm telling myself about why I can't have it or why I'm not that?
Yeah.
I'm reminded of this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll find a way to relate it. Well, I remember being a first year medical student, and there was a conference coming up, and a lot of students trying to save money, they just volunteer. So you get in for free, and then you help out, and you can occasionally sit in on some of the lectures. I wanted to volunteer, and all the volunteer positions were full, and the tickets weren't that much, so I was like, all right, I'll buy one. So I sit down and I'm sitting next to this older guy, and he's probably in his 70s, and he's been a naturopathic doctor for like 40 something years. And in
Mm,
my mind, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm next to like an elder. This guy's gonna be like a wealth of knowledge, and if he's open to it, I'm gonna ask him all these questions. Now, similar to yourself, I knew naturopathic doctors who had made $1 million plus, and they
mhm,
were doing amazing, and they were impacting, the writing books. They were on TV. They were doing all these wonderful things. And I started talking to this guy, and my first question was, if you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now, would you? And he goes,
mm.
oh no. And I'm a first year student. And I'm sitting there going, oh shit. And I said, why not? And he goes, oh, there's no money in it. Now, but because I knew in my mind people who were doing really well financially in this field, I knew that wasn't true necessarily. So I just said, "Oh, tell me about it. Like, what do you mean?" And it turns out, and no disrespect to this guy, this is just what he knew at the time, but essentially he had this clinic that was on a side street in like the middle of nowhere, no
Mm,
sign, no advertising. Essentially, nobody knew he was there. And his mindset was, "Oh yeah, I don't advertise, I don't market. The people that are meant to find me will find me."
mm.
That's not a winning strategy for business. And
No.
so if you're coming from that space, but notice that rather than take let's say, the onus on you and say, maybe I'm not doing it properly to create the financial result that I'm wanting, he's blaming the profession and saying
Mm.
it's the profession's fault. The world doesn't want this. No, the world's dying for this. You're not putting yourself out there, presenting yourself in such a way that they can see you.
That's yeah, and it brings up another point in that story itself is the human mind uh, cannot leave a gap between two data points. We must link them. It is the human being's ability to define a story that separates us from every other animal. Every other animal can take in stimuli, detect the senses, detect the patterns, notice the patterns within the senses. That's why our dogs start to pout before we even get ready to like brush our teeth to leave. They know what day, it's Monday, right? Somehow, because they see patterns. They can smell us, whatever. But we have the ability to write a story. So bring it. I'll come back to this example, but here's a real quick one, right? So for listeners here, you imagine this: you walk back home, you come back home, the fishbowl's tipped over, the carpet is wet, the fish is missing, and the cat is sitting on the sofa, kind of looking happy. As I'm saying this, you're probably thinking, oh, the cat ate the fish, right? But in reality, what do you actually know? Like, could somebody have staged that event, right? Theoretically, yes. But our brain will bridge that information gap and immediately say the cat ate the fish. So, like for this doctor who wouldn't go back and do it again, there's no money in it. Um, Instead of looking at things more objectively and saying, okay, am I visible? Am I marketing? Is my messaging and branding correct? Like, am I being niched enough? Am I networking? Am I like all of these things? Is just saying there's no money in it. That's the bridging the information gap that's going on in that person's mind. Okay, so what is the operating system? Like, we're all going to do this. Even those of us that constantly work on ourselves, we're instinctively going to bridge the information gap and create a story all the time. It is what we do. However, we can always observe that story immediately or slightly later and say, what assumptions did I make? Is that true? Are there alternate realities? Right? Is there an alternate universe that something else could have happened? And then we say, all right, I don't know. I literally don't know which one of these is the truth, but what questions can I now ask to figure out which one might be the truth? Right? That shift from that subjective reality to as much of an objective reality as possible is what emotional health is all about. Because when we know that we have the ability to craft a story instantly, some of them are empowering, some of them might be disempowering, but it's that operating system that we have that's going to dictate which one it is.
Yeah.
So upgrade the operating system,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, those stories, maybe by default, are less disempowering, maybe more empowering. And the more you practice it over the course of time, again, it's not like the circumstances in life change. Like we're still going to go through loss and grieving and unforeseen circumstances and whatever it is. Macroeconomic factors, all the things that affect us. But how we react to them changes when we upgrade this.
Yeah, I'm reminded of there was a Jim Rohn, personal development guy back in the day, and he had a quote, "Life doesn't get easier, you get better."
Yeah.
And I love that because the same life circumstances happen, but how you show up to that party, how you show up is going to be different. And as it relates to emotional health, could you share with us, in your opinion, what are the role of emotions?
Emotions are. uh, I I was one of those people that always prided myself on being as logical and rational and everything as possible. It was a rude awakening in life when I realized that we make our most important decisions emotionally and then justify them rationally. It's true though. Emotions, from a biological standpoint, emotions and the magnitude of them, whether positive or negative, but the magnitude of them have a direct impact on things that are coded in our memory for long-term memory. The more emotional the event, the more we remember it because we're made to remember the lesson from it. That's an evolutionary pressure, an evolutionary advantage that we have. So that's what emotions are for. To at a biological level is to help us experience and grow, and then drive us toward certain certain behaviors. Certainly the emotion of falling in love has a biological advantage of of progressing the species, all of those things. In our modern world, though, a little bit different, right? The drive to avoid pain, right, which is within all of us, out in nature is really great to avoid that feline-looking thing with stripes that's in the forest here. Maybe I should avoid the tiger, right? But again, we're made for a world where energy is scarce. We conserve energy as much as possible. And now we don't even have to get up off the sofa to get a meal. We just have it delivered to our door. And pretty soon we'll have our little humanoid robots to go open the front door, grab our DoorDash, and drop it in front of us, right? And so, like, as a result of that, the drive for avoiding avoiding pain and seeking pleasure can actually betray us in certain elements of life now. That's why I think emotional health is not about being of this blanket emotional toughness, like nothing bothers me, that sort of thing. No, it's the ability to identify, process, and act upon feelings in a specific moment and over the course of time. Both scenarios. Identify, process, and act. Oh my God, what happened? What am I feeling? What is this about? Process, right? Okay, I already have a game plan. When I get into when my significant other and I get into a misunderstanding, we've already outlined what the game plan is for how we handle it. So then we act accordingly, rather than just blurting something out when we're in amygdala hijack and we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Take that back, right? And so it's identify, process, and act. So emotional health is not the absence of mental illness alone. Emotional health is truly emotional intelligence plus emotional resilience, the understanding of oneself at the deepest level, understanding of others to the best of our ability, and emotional resilience, the ability to bounce back from the challenges that arise.
Hmm, beautiful. I love that. And the idea of emotional resilience coming into the emotional health, what does that mean to you?
I think that's the core of it all, right? I mean, if you can be aware, that's the intellectual knowledge, right? But how you use it, the actions define us. being resilient is an action. It's when we get knocked down, we figure out how to majestically pick ourselves back up and lift those around us,
Yeah.
right? It may not be pretty all the time, but is it effective? Is it something that we can look back on and say, you know, I love your line, living a life without regret. Can we look back and say, that was a tough period of time. I learned a whole lot from it, and it led to all these other incredible things that wouldn't happen otherwise. I wouldn't change a thing. That's a life without regret, right? And so being emotionally resilient gives us more tools in our toolbox to be able to not regret later in life.
Yeah, when you shared that, it just reminded me of that. I think it's an ancient Chinese proverb. The secret to success is falling down 7 times, getting up eight. It's like life is going to happen. It's like the punching bag. It's going to throw stuff at you, and you deal with it as effectively as you know how to. And over time, hopefully, you're growing, you're learning, you're becoming more. And like the Jim Rohn quote I brought up earlier, life doesn't get easier, we get better. Where just like in the beginning, when you try to go for long walks and you've never done that before, you get winded after a period of time. But eventually,
Mm-hmm.
you build it up, and now you're walking 10 times longer than you used to. But did walking get easier in terms of like the mechanics of it, or did the road get shorter? No, your ability enhanced, and that's
Yes.
different. Now, something that stood out to me in your bio that I really loved. How do we find the wonder within ourselves?
It's not terribly complicated. It's actually quite simple, just not easy, right? It's not easy. Um, we were all children, been around children, right? Do you have to do you have to convince a child to dream, right? To have imagination, to play? No. That's the default state. That's who they are. I have to convince them. Oh, by the way, it's not even just human children. My wife and I got a puppy a few months ago, right? She's 8 months old now. All she wants to do is play, right? All she wants to do is play. It's just who she is. And even her older brother now is 11, right? Is Malty Poo. He's always been a high energy dog, right? When she came into the mix, the contrast was like, whoa, youthful energy. But the spirit is still within him. When they go zooming together and whatnot, it's still there. We learn not to play as humans. We learn not to dream. We learn not to get in touch with who we actually are. So finding the wonder within is not about creating something that isn't there. It's just about sweeping the dirty floor, mopping it, and revealing the incredible marble tile that's underneath. That's us, right? That's what it's all about. So one quick way, right? Jamil, one of my favorite clients, he owns a event security firm here in Phoenix. Employs close to 50 people. Done pretty well in his career, continues to. And great human being. Came to me because business was okay, but not growing because he was dealing with a lot in his personal life. The first session we had, I mean, you talk about emotion. This big, tough, strong guy, tattoos, everything, right? The picture of toughness. And it's like, I ran out of tissues in my office. Like he was going through it. He was going through it. My heart was just bleeding for him. And I knew there was nothing I was going to be able to teach him in that first session that was going to land because it was all too heavy. Life was too heavy. And he just had a moment there where he was able to let it out because there was nobody else he could. Had to be strong for everyone else, right? As a lot of us feel like we have to do as leaders. I got to be strong for everybody. And yes, you don't want to, not everybody is your therapist, that sort of thing. You need your people in your corner to go get your help and your coach and that kind of thing. But that's what I became for him. And so the first session I said, okay, one of the lessons that I teach is what I call your things, right? What are the things that you love to do for no reason at all? Like the stuff that you don't have to justify to anybody. It's just, I love doing it. I don't care. It's amazing. Such a good feeling. For me, it's singing in the car and that sort of thing, right? For a lot of people, it's I've had clients that's like, oh, just being out in my garden, like tending to my plants, like it's just my happy place, right? What's your happy place? So I asked him, we made a list on the whiteboard, like, what are the things you love doing? And he's like, I love having dinner with my kids, no devices and they're just talking, right? And he love going to concerts, love everything, going to the gym, love. And one of the things he said is, I love riding my motorcycle. I said, okay, hold on there. Your motorcycle. And he has a Harley that he loves. And I go, when was the last time you drove your motorcycle? He's like, dude, I have 4 kids. I run a business. I don't have time for it. I said, okay, well, when was? Just let me. I don't know. I think maybe one time in the last 4 or 5 months. I said, okay. So here's your homework. I'm going to see you in 2 weeks, right? Here's your homework. You're going to ride your motorcycle 8 times before I see you in 2 weeks, 4 times each week. And send me a selfie when you're on your bike. He's like, seriously, Dr. K? That's it? That's groundbreaking homework, right? I said, yeah, just do it. It's like, all right, fine. He comes back 2 weeks later. He's like, oh my God, I missed that feeling. You can see the life come back in him. He's like, it clears my mind. I just feel so free. I just love doing it. Just the open road and the feeling of the bike underneath me. It's just liberating. And I hadn't given myself a chance to do that. And if you're struggling right now, you, the listener, right? How many times have you done the things that you love to do during this stretch? I'm not saying it's because you didn't do the things that you love to do that you're feeling this way. I'm just saying that because life unfolded a certain way and we're feeling down about it, one of the first things to go is the stuff that makes us feel alive. Just add it back in, even if you're seemingly forcing yourself. But I promise you, the moment you start giving yourself a chance, and I can tell you more stories like this with other clients, it changes something, because that gets us back in touch with the wonder within. Who are we truly? That child within us, the one that just wants to play. For him, playing is going for a ride on his bike, right? Now he often comes to our sessions on his bike, so
That's amazing. Yeah, I feel like that also speaks to burnout. It's like not only potentially we're in a position that we're not aligned with or we don't necessarily want to be there, but we stop doing the things that fill up the tank, that feel like they fulfill us and then they nurture our spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Um, it's vital. It's vital. It's simple, very simple, but we need it. And I think if we can make one of those things part of morning me time, a morning routine, right? That can really go a long way. And it doesn't have to be long, For me, it's like go for a drive. It's very easy to want to listen to a podcast or an audiobook and learn all the time. And every so often I'll just be like, am I in a space to learn right now, or am I in a space for music? And I brought music back into my life, and that happens. You start singing and it's like, damn, that feels good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing that you brought up earlier that I made a note, I wanted to revisit it. When you think of imposter syndrome, when you think about self-criticism, how have you found people best move through these experiences?
I think one of the most important things is to understand our own mind, understand how did we get here. And I walk my clients through this process of this brain mapping, this life journey that, along with the framework that I call the truth cycle, to help them understand how do our brains develop, generally speaking, and how does that influence how we think, act, and feel today. And now let's apply that concept to understand the sense of identity, the operating system, the stuff that we are unconscious to, going back in time. So it's a slightly different perspective than, let's say, reprocessing therapy like EMDR. It's simply an observation. It's an observation of these things happened, which led to these other things. Some of them are negative, some of them are positive, right? It's all in the perspective and certainly the emotion of what we experienced at that time, and maybe our how we see it today. Once we understand the truths that I call the unconscious lens through which we see the world, the subjective reality, that we live in, that each of us live in. Once we understand that, we can understand where does that lead to a set of patterns that I'm now calling being too hard on myself, self-criticism. Where does that lead to these set of patterns that we call imposter syndrome? And what other things resulted from those events too, though? And oftentimes, as we look back on our journey, we realize that, we mentioned earlier the role of emotions. Emotions lead to very strong shifts in our thinking behavior or that lens through which we see the world. And some of it is disempowering. Some of it is also empowering. Sometimes they come from the same events. So, to your point about what do you want to focus on, right? Going back to way earlier in our conversation, like in this moment, what is it that you want to focus on? And now part of that is a conscious changing of like, okay, I see that, but over the course of time, it starts to become, you know what? I'm going to into the things that are empowering and lean away from the things that are disempowering, knowing that they all came from the same source.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, just being with that. Something that our listeners likely don't know that seems that not seems it is really exciting is you've recently released a book and brand new book. It's called The Emotionally Healthy You: How to Own Your Past and Love Your Future. And there was a review that I saw that I thought was fantastic, and I wanted to share this and get your take on it. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about giving yourself permission to grow without carrying the weight of your past so heavily. And that's something I really agree with and would love. Can you speak to that? That was someone's opinion after reading your book.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's certain things that we do could benefit from in truly reprocessing our past. There's certain traumatic events that many people go through that require, and I mentioned this in the book several times, the EMDR is one of my favorite therapies, how to find an EMDR therapist. So as a complement to that, right? Not a replacement, a complement. But it's recognizing it's not what I teach in the Emotionally Healthy You is not a framework for changing the past because none of us can change the past. The past is what it is. It's a framework for acceptance. Now, acceptance is not condoning. Condoning is saying, "Oh, you stole from me," or let's say, "That's okay. That's okay." No, 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 no. You hurt me, but that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I'll be okay. No, that's condoning. Acceptance is simply saying this happened, good or bad. It happened, right? So it's to say the past, our past, happened. There's nothing we or anyone else can do to change it. What we learn from that can be different, though. What we learn from that can simply inform us to say, what is this operating system that I utilize today to filter information, just like the cat ate the fish, right? That was our first instinct. But what if there's another story? What if the other story is, okay, I see this data, but I need to know more, right? And so how do you rewire that? Well, you first have to understand where you came from. That's all the past is for. The next part is my favorite, and I think yours as well. How do you craft that future self and live into that vision today? So the book is less about reprocessing the past and more about simply understanding who you are today as a result of the past so that you can do the same thing for going forward. Who do you then have to become today to create a future that you love?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when it comes. I remember there was a class that you and I took together. I believe it was like a hypnosis class. And the teacher who taught that, I remember he shared something like, "Can you change the past? Of course you can." But but it's coming from this space though. It's not changing what happened, like you talked about. It's changing how you be with that and is your experience of it. So if I were to ask you to now reflect on a memory from the past, when are you doing that? Well, you're doing it now. Now, your memory, research is very clear that our memories are often very different from what actually happened. So what you recall is only like a slice of it. It's a perspective, it's a facet of what actually happened. And it's like usually it's a selective memory. So for example, maybe you didn't have a great childhood from your perspective. And if I say, tell me about it, you'll tell me about it within that lens or that filter of why it wasn't good. But there were moments that were really great, whether it was a day or whether it was even an hour or whatever it might have been, that you could look back and go, you know what? Yeah, overall, I wasn't pleased with it, but there were some moments in there that I can look back really fondly. There were some happy moments in there. Now, when you bring that in and include it, it doesn't change what happened, but it gives you a more complete picture. And with the complete picture, your emotional response to the memory changes. And when
Absolutely. And I'll add this to it. I'll use myself as an example. We didn't go through the story today, maybe for another day, but my time in my undergrad at Cornell was the darkest days of my life. And I describe it as this. I mean, it was to the point of I didn't know if I was going to make it, truthfully, right? And it was years of suffering, years. I look back and I say this. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I don't ever want to go to bed at night and have a dream to relive any of it. Any of it. Worst period of my life. And I wouldn't change a thing.
Mhm.
Because had it not been for that, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah.
And I've learned to love who I am today because of the impact that I get to make and that I think is the key because if we can craft that future that we desire and we start living into that today and we become that, now all of a sudden the past doesn't become this baggage, it becomes the necessary learning that we had to go through to become the beauty that we are today. You see?
Yeah.
And so does that change the past? No. But does it shift how we view the past? Absolutely. Just like our hypnosis teacher was trying to tell us.
Absolutely. If right now in your world, if you have a level of resilience or a level of strength or a perspective that's creating something really beautiful in your world right now, or recently, let's say in the past it has, are you condemning the thing that helped you create that strength, that helped you create that resilience? Because if that wasn't there, you wouldn't have this right now. And maybe there's certain people in your life, as an example, this may or may not be true, but let's just say you had the experience that you had in Cornell, but as a result of that, that put you down a certain path. And as a result of that, let's say you ended up in Wall Street. And as a result of that path, you ended up in Arizona, and then you met your
Yeah.
wife, and now you've got this life that you have. Well, what if you didn't go to Cornell? You wouldn't have met her.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so we play with,
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's not even just that, Jamil. It's if I hadn't gone through that, if I hadn't experienced depression at the deepest core, there's no way I'd be really able to relate to somebody now. Because I remember back then, friends saying, trying to be helpful. Just I give them credit for that, but it wasn't helpful. But asking like, I mean, it'll be okay. Just cheer up. It'll.
Mhm.
Or other things like that, or simply like, or even the ones that were trying to understand, is it like a really intense sadness? I'm like, no, not at all. It was looking back, it was a disconnect between the life I was living and who I truly was.
Yeah.
And those were at odds with each other. And that's what it, was to me. Had I not gone through that, I can't understand. I mean, I'm telling you the story of the gentleman on his bike. There's no way I would have been able to understand him when he walked in.
Yeah.
Right? So it's what if our past, the painful stuff, face it, we learn much more from pain than we do pleasure, right? We learn a lot more from the losses than we do the wins. We see it in pro sports teams all the time. Think about your favorite team, maybe a football team, and there's certain games that they play like crap, but they somehow win, right? And you're happy as a fan that they got the win, but you hope that they're not resting on their laurels that, okay, well, we can sneak it out at the end and make a comeback victory. No, there's against the good teams, you won't make it. In the playoffs, you're going to lose. You have to learn from the wins and the losses, but it's a lot easier to lose from the losses. Those are the wake up calls in life, right? Just how our brain's wired.
Yeah.
So those losses, those challenges, they're painful when you go through it. But what is the situation allowing me to do that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so powerful when we can just reflect on our past and say, like you said, there's an acceptance. What happened, happened. Now, given whatever happened, what gold can I mine from that? What strength can I pull from that? What lessons can I internalize so that I can create the life that I want going forward and not repeat any of the things that I don't want? And there's so much magic there, I think, when we can give ourselves permission to do that and go through that process. And as we begin to wrap up, if our conversation today was your last opportunity to share the message that's on your heart with the world, that this was the last time they would hear from you, what would you want to make sure you left them with?
We all change when it hurts enough. I hope that your learnings don't have to happen because life made you change. It's going to happen for all of us. So, my encouragement to you is this: seek the growth now. Growth is inherently uncomfortable. If you're learning a new skill, a new language at whatever age we are right now, is much harder than when we learned a new language when we were kids. But think about all of the great things that you appreciate about your life. Did they come easy or were they hard? Right? The most fulfilling things in life took work. They were challenging. And so instead of avoiding the pain, what if we can never let our pain go to waste?
Mm.
Yes, when you're in the midst of burnout, I totally get it, right? Take a step back, rest and recover. But there's a point, almost like when you go on vacation and you first go on that vacation, this trip, you're like, oh, it's so great. I really needed this to get away from work, everything else. And there's a point of diminishing returns where that 10th day, that 11th day, and you start like, man, I just want to get home, get back to my routine, right? Just like that, you're going to get to a point where you have recovered a little bit. Life is good now. Maybe that's the time to lean into the growth. That's the time to make it a little uncomfortable, right? Examine some of the challenges from the past. Do the work that we've been talking about here, right? And if you do that, I'm not saying that pain will just go away, but your ability to handle it will improve dramatically. Your quality of life will improve dramatically. So I just leave you with this: never let your pain go to waste. Stop chasing joy. Begin living in wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much, especially because I often tell people there are miracles happening all around you every second, even right now. Like as we're sitting here, each of us have had however many millions or billions of cells that have been turning over. As we're just having a beautiful conversation, our bodies are just doing the work to keep us alive. Right now, the sun is shining, or even if it's cloudy, it's still shining. Like whatever's going on, life is unfolding the way it's unfolding. There's people in your world right now, some or all of whom you really care about, and they woke up today. There's literal miracles happening all around you, but if you don't have eyes for it because you're not looking for it, you don't see it,
Right.
you don't experience it. And so that idea of don't chase joy, thinking it's out there, live from wonder, see the awe like everywhere, especially within you, experience the awe, experience the wonder, and the joy happens as a byproduct,
Yes.
And so I so
Yes.
love that you shared that. And so right now, what is exciting you that you're working on, working towards?
Yeah. Well, the book came out as we're recording this last week. Last week. Um, Super proud that we hit number one new release bestseller in 4 categories, which was just amazing to see that kind of response. There's a workbook coming out for it as well, so you'll have the book plus the workbook to go with it. You can also download the workbook for on my website on the reader resources, but if you prefer to have a nice printed version, that's coming out very soon. And then the other common question I get is, Dr. K, when's the Audible version coming out? And so that is coming out. It will be here in June. So if you're listening to this episode after that, it might be out by now. What's exciting me is on the grand scheme of things is this, right? My work is primarily B2B. I work with entrepreneurs, I work with executives, I work with their companies. And the reason that I do that is certainly, I have the experience from my past, business experience, certainly entrepreneur experience now. But I just recognize that my goal to impact the emotional health of 100 million people is not going to happen unless I can, impact people at scale. When I can work with a company, for instance, or work with an executive who is in charge of many people, that allows, through those people allows impact to occur. Because now when that person shows up as the best version of themselves, it helps certainly in the team. Now the workplace becomes a place that it's not, a dread to go to the office, but rather a place to become a better person as a result and live with a sense of purpose. It's a beautiful thing. But now that person goes home and now they're a better, father or mother, spouse for their families, right? Their communities, everything else. And it's that's what's exciting. But what I am really excited with the book specifically is that so many of the tools that I teach my executives and everybody else, and certainly I guide them through the process of the accountability, and that's what they appreciate there. But the content itself is in this book for everybody, and because I really want this to be, it's there for you when you're ready. It's there for you, and it's a book that was 14 years in the making in terms of the story that led up to it. And so it's something I'm incredibly proud of and very eager to get it in as many hands as possible.
Oh yeah. And something that you just shared that sparked this, and this may be beautiful for you to hear. So here's this goal. I want to impact 100 million people and help them in this way. And you have this life experience. It's almost like that. How old were you around that Wall Street time and the Cornell time?
27, yeah,
And then the Cornell time? What was that?
my late teens,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like late teens and then let's say all of your 20s. You've got this life experience that at times was really difficult, like hardest period of
yeah,
your life, like you said. But it's like that future version of you that's like, oh no, I'm going to be impacting 100 million plus people. And I have this book coming out, like the first of many, let's say. But in order for this to come out, I need some content. I need some life
yeah,
experience
yeah,
to happen. And in the moment, we don't see that. I usually use this metaphor of it's like the horse, the racehorse has the blinders on. It can
hmm,
only see what's right in front of it. But so I use the metaphor of your ego has the blinders on. It just sees what's right in front of it. And if it doesn't like what's right in front of it, is it's not supposed to be this way. What's going
hmm,
on? This is not fair. Like, why is it happening to me? But your spirit, it's like the 30,000 foot view looking down saying, it's all going to make sense. Just keep going.
yeah.
Trust the
Keep
process.
going.
And so,
Exactly.
with that in mind, you are so on your way to making that dream a reality. And I would love if you could share with our audience anyone who wants to learn more about you, follow you, work with you. How can they best do that?
Yeah, well, certainly, probably the book is the easiest way to get introduced to my content. Emotionallyhealthyyou.com, and I'm sure you have all the links in the show notes and all that. Emotionallyhealthyyou.com. You can pick up the book there. And certainly, if you're interested in exploring my entrepreneur emotional support program, which is for anywhere from solopreneurs up to small businesses. Leaders in their community, people that want to be the best they can be, not just for the people they work for, their clients, but for their families, for themselves. That's a wonderful community. It's my favorite program, really, is my EESP program. And then Emotional Health Mastery is where I work with executives one on one on a 1 year basis. And then we take that up to the Emotionally Healthy Company, where I work with the executives and the whole company. So we can explore any of those things. You can just go to my website, drkarthikramanan.com, read up on any of those, and you'll be able to find how to contact me through that. But I would say first would be the book, and I would, if personal asks you, if you do pick up the book and you read it, whatever you gain from it, it would mean the absolute world to me if you'd leave me a review on Amazon for it. That makes more of a difference than you maybe even know from a algorithm standpoint and everything else, because it just helps Amazon put it in front of other people who might need the same message like you. So if you do choose to pick up the book and read it, please share your review as that would mean everything to me and whoever else comes across the book and benefits from it as a result of your review. So thank you for that in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just second that to our audience. I know whenever I buy a lot of books on Amazon, whenever I'm buying a book, I do pretty much always go down to the reviews and check it out first. And so your review could put this book in the hands of somebody who really needs it. And so thank you all so much for that. And if this conversation has been valuable to you, first, please share it far and wide. There's someone in your world right now who is emotionally struggling. Someone in your world right now, you might not even realize it, But if you get a gut hit, an intuition, so and so would like this, share it. You never know the impact it would make. And if you can leave it a review or, a like, a comment, a YouTube comment, a Apple, Spotify, whatever it might be, like Karthik said, it goes a long way for the algorithm, helps more people find the show and find the conversations. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your attention. I know there's a lot of ways you could be spending that, and you chose to be here with us today. So thank you so much for that. And as we wrap up, Karthik, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just remember one thing. We all got here because there are people along the way that helped us get here. And we all feel a great sense of purpose in being able to help those who come after us, guide them, right, in their journeys. That's the beauty of the human existence. So let's never forget that. And just remember, and I'll speak for you as well, Jamil, I believe in your greatness.
Absolutely. I call this podcast Transformation Starts Today because I find that most people's favorite day to change their life is tomorrow. And that's why they stay stuck. But you could be different. You could take anything that has landed with you today and you could begin applying it immediately. You could think, who is that future version of me that I want to be, either across the board or in any specific area of life? And how can I use 1% more today? Be that. Start acting that way. You will shock yourself with how quickly that version of you becomes the reality you experience right now. All my love to you and your families. I look forward to the next time we connect. Take care. Thank you for being with us today. If this conversation served you, it would mean a lot if you left a review and shared this with anyone who may benefit. An extraordinary life without regret is available to you now. Choose it. It's your time.